you're both very active in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And why do you think that's important? I mean, because I'm sure you have neighbors and there's people that are not active.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you enjoy, or why is it important to you?
That's a good question.
Well, I think there's a couple of answers to that. Number one is that this is where we are building our life. This is where our first home is. We were married in Garfield Park. We had our reception at Fountain Square Theater. So we are invested. We're going to be raising our child here. So that when you're committed and invested, then sometimes that motivates you to get out and understand what you can do to make a difference in your neighborhood. So that's one part, I would say, just because we're passionate about seeing, we're in for the long haul here. So it's, we're committed to seeing change and positive change. So I would say that is definitely one part of it. You're always sort of find that motivation and that passion if you're invested.
Mm-hmm. And it's part of building the community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knew when we moved into this area that there was a lot of potential and a lot of need for upward movement, and there still is. So it's almost, I think, part of the pact of coming to an area like this that I felt that this was our obligation, that we needed to work on this. And I don't know, maybe some people don't see the change that they can bring about.
Right. I think a lot of what Indianapolis is, the urban neighborhoods, is you will find that there is a strong resident community, and because they understand that they can come out and make a difference, that residents just deciding to make a change can actually make that change happen. So, and the other part of it is that I just think it's sort of individual passions that we have. I mean, obviously Jonathan with his background with waterways and trails and just things of that nature. I mean, we just have, Fountain Square is a very cultural community. I'm very much passionate about the arts, and such. So I think that's another reason why we choose to get involved as well.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And I just enjoy it. It's just a great way to interact with your community too, and get to know people around the city who come out, and maybe it's just like-minded people. But it is interesting. It's like a subset of the population that's more active and engaged and volunteer-oriented, which Indianapolis has a very large percentage of their population that does do that,
right,
compared with other cities.
I think so.
I think I agree that it is a lot of fun getting out and sweating and getting your hands dirty with other people on a riverbank. So kind of brings you all together.
Absolutely.
So
and it's amazing what someone, a passion voice with regular and steady determination can accomplish, and that people can stand behind that person, and so much can be accomplished.
So, Jonathan, you're still active. Is it the Public Space Committee?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about those projects that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
We both actually serve on the Public Space Committee.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell us about that, and then I know that you're doing more, so I'm asking.
That's okay.
So
I hardly know where to begin.
cleanups and vision for what could be.
Mm-hmm. I guess that was one of the first outlets I was able to find for when I came to this area. That everything seemed, there was so much room for visual improvement in the neighborhood. There's just a lot of trash everywhere, it felt like, and the infrastructure is kind of crumbling and falling apart, and it just needed a little more than just a little polish. I felt like. So when I found the Send Public Space Committee, that was a perfect fit of, okay, this is actually getting out and getting engaged, and what can we do to clean things up? Because it was not that hard just to point and say, okay, these are some items that we're used to this, but these don't have to be this way. We don't have to have trash in the streets. And maybe it's not so much that every person has to pick up their trash. There were things like the 96-gallon trash containers. When you're able to figure out specific tangible items and engage the city or the right person and keep talking to them about that, we've made great strides. So the 96-gallon trash containers is a good example. Infrastructure, Jeff Miller, who started as chair of the Public Space Committee. Now he's our city councilman.
Beloved city council.
His passion was infrastructure, streets and sidewalks. So we went and we mapped all the streets and sidewalks and graded them using the city system to actually show them, okay, these are the areas that need it most. And when there is a street or a sidewalk that's getting fixed up, it's not because someone's friends with someone else in the city that, yes, these are the worst streets and we do need to improve this. Or these are the worst streets that are very busy and, there's a lot of people on those. So there is a little bit of a leeway, but it should never be, I'd called the city a lot, or I'm friends with the mayor or the city councilman. So we're able to start to move away from that. And then, of course, the Pleasant Run was its own unique avenue. That was this great amenity, not right in the middle of our cultural district, but just right down the road.
Yeah.
And I guess technically we're in the Pogues Run watershed, which is kind of interesting.
Are Pleasant you Run, officially?
Well,
really?
Pleasant Run is actually a very narrow watershed. And Pogues Run is quite a bit wider. Because I think it goes up, that's right, just a little bit. It goes uphill, up towards like Bees, the Po' Boys, and then it goes downhill. And so that is like the edge of our watershed. Yeah. So when you look at the Pleasant Run watershed, it's very long and narrow, while Pogues is actually shorter but real fat. So technically but of course we're much closer to Pleasant Run. We associate ourselves with the Pleasant Run much more, because then our section of Pogues Run, it's underground. So we can't actually see that.
Honest, it's there. Sure
is. That's right.
Wow, I
It's
had
missing.
no idea. I had no idea that the Pogues Run, the watershed is all the way down here.
So our Pleasant Run Trail is just right down the way, and that leads right down to Garfield Park. And there's the trail has already been in place for years. And I think Tina, I think you had quite a bit to do with that.
Tried. Still.
So that's what I almost felt like. It was interesting because when I'd come to the area and I'm looking around and I'm trying to piece this stuff in my mind, and I'm like, well, someone cared enough to build a trail here, but there's trash everywhere. So that was one of the things we started up with immediately was cleanups. Let's get out there and let's make a Saturday and go out and have a volunteer day and clean this up. And those were wildly successful and great ways to engage all those communities along the trail. You know, the We Can neighborhood. And that would be,
Marty.
good people to speak to. Marty.
And Rob up in camps and Bates Hendricks
Rob,
people.
a little bit downstream. And that's just in this section, of course. I think those are probably our most engaged stream neighborhoods, because then we're kind of divided. Whereas with the Coke plant, that creates that barrier on the neighborhoods. But we're trying to streamline the trail through the old Coke plant right now, and citizens has been very engaged. Of course, it's a long process and it takes time, but fortunately they're being engaged, and I think they're interested in the community and being very generous right now.
So have you noticed like more increase of use or comments about the Pleasant Run Trail? That
without a doubt.
People
I
like
think people
what you're
used
doing?
to.
Or?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. We haven't done any surveys before and after, but that's the science and engineering background.
Yeah, it's okay. We need both sides of the brain here.
That's right. But I think I've definitely noticed more use, just that it's gotten cleaner and nicer. I don't know if that's maybe the community is coming along more, or the type of people are moving here are the types who would be more engaged in creating families too. And that's a really nice thing to do with families, go out and walk along the trail. But it's certainly gotten a lot nicer. We've had many tree plantings when Indy Parks came in, and we planted tons of trees.
600 and some on the Lily Day
just a few,
just on that
600, you know, that's just a few hundred along. I think and that's all in between Garfield Park and the Coke plant, correct?
Correct. It was from Keystone down to Raymond was the Lily Day of Service for the big plant.
That's right. So we can't downplay the importance that Lily and Lily Day of Service has had of just the concentration of volunteers that you're able to get on one day. So it takes so much preparation, and then sometimes cleanup and wrapping up afterwards. But that's really great impetus, and it's a great catalyst to get us out there and focus and do that.
Yeah. So do you have cleanups this year, or what are some of the activities this year?
We will.
Okay.
We don't have any dates set on the Pleasant Run. I think we're going to have some Lily Day of Service people come out again to do honeysuckle removal.
Wow. And that's in the fall time now. They've switched to fall activities because it's too hot in the spring with the stress on the trees and people and things. So the
For tree planting,
fall
that
gives
makes
it
sense.
an easier window.
Of course, spraying is probably better during the spring and summer.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So now they're going to take out the honeysuckle and they're going to come back and spray. I know, or at least I think KIB is going to make sure there's a spraying contractor involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
The trail's been great. You know, there have been no real changes to the trail. We've just kind of cleaned up and engaged neighbors around them, and it's kind of teaching them the tools that are available. When you have this idea, then people are able to come to the the Public Space Committee and say, here's my problem, my concern, and we say, okay, well, now what would we do about this? A lot of times it's just contact the Mayor's Action Center, but many times it's not. It's we need to talk with parks, or, let's actually work with our mayor's liaison, who's been wonderful.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah,
she's
Lisa Laughlin,
awesome.
give her a plug. And, she hardly rests that, there's, if you bring any issue to her, that she usually finds a resolution, or how do we get to a resolution?
Yeah.
She can work out the plan. So she's been great. So that's a lot of times it becomes this just kind of a little bit of a problem solving. Okay, here's a problem. Here's a new problem. This is great. Now what do we do about this?
Yeah.